A former pastor is now charged with killing two of his wives.
Two hitmen to kill his own wife back in the 90s has died in prison.
While many pastors are dedicated to guiding their congregations towards a spiritual path, a disturbing few have betrayed their sacred trust. These individuals, once revered as spiritual leaders, have committed acts of heinous violence against their own families. Here are the pastors who tragically crossed the line from spiritual guidance to murder. In 2006, Matt Baker, a respected pastor at Crossroads Baptist Church in Texas, reported his wife, Carrie, as having died by suicide. However, a series of suspicious circumstances led to a closer investigation. Carrie's parents were troubled by Matt's unusual behavior and inconsistencies in his account. Their suspicions were further fueled by the discovery of pornography and searches related to overdosing on sleeping pills on Matt's work computer. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that Matt was having an affair with the music minister's daughter. She testified in court that Matt had confessed to killing his wife for her. The jury found Matt guilty of murder in a swift verdict, exposing the dark reality behind the facade of his spiritual leadership. Arthur B. Shermer, a Pennsylvania pastor, was sentenced to life in 2013 for the death of his second wife. In 2008, a jury convicted Arthur B. Shermer of first-degree murder after he was proven to have struck his wife in the head with a crowbar and loaded her into a car. He then drove his car into a guardrail and claimed that his wife was killed in the wreck. After being sentenced, the case of the death of his first wife was reopened in Lebanon County. Arthur was the pastor of Bethany United Methodist Church when his first wife was found at the bottom of the basement steps of their home with an extension cord wrapped around her leg. She suffered multiple skull fractures and died the following day in the hospital. They later found that she suffered a massive heart attack during the fall. After the case was reopened, it was found that her heart damage was from brain trauma and not from the fall. He was then convicted of her death as well and sentenced to 20 to 40 years. Eugene Keehee, the pastor of Mount Zion Church of Sand Branch, committed a horrific act of violence before taking his own life. In a devastating incident, Keehee murdered his wife and two daughters, setting their home ablaze and causing their deaths by smoke inhalation and burns.
Community still reeling this evening after a house fire where firefighters found the bodies of three people, including a prominent pastor and his wife.
Authorities, alerted by neighbors who heard gunshots during the fire, discovered evidence at the scene that raised suspicions. The Keehee family was facing significant financial difficulties, and it is believed that these pressures may have driven Keehee to commit such a heinous act. The tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences that can arise from untreated mental health issues and financial hardship. Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins was the pastor at Inspirational Tabernacle Church in Jackson, Alabama. While he was preaching at revivals and trying to save the lost, he was secretly terrorizing his own family. After his wife discovered him sexually abusing his stepdaughter, he killed her and stuffed her into a freezer in 2004. Her body wasn't found until 4 years later when the oldest stepdaughter came forward to police. Some of the children testified that the couple were fighting the night the mother died, and she kicked Hopkins out of the house. He re-entered the home through a window, and one child said he was holding a hammer. The oldest stepdaughter told the court that Hopkins asked her to help him dispose of the body in the freezer. Hopkins denied killing her and stated that he found her dead and didn't know what to do with the body, so he placed her in the freezer to keep her from decomposing. Authorities couldn't determine how she died, but her death was ruled a homicide. Hopkins was convicted of murder, second-degree rape, second-degree sex abuse, second-degree sodomy, and incest. Edmund Lopes told his congregation of the small Washington church that he was once a hired killer who killed more than 28 people, but that life was far behind him. The congregation forgave him, but the truth would soon come to light. Lopes was a parole violator from Illinois, and the authorities wanted him to return immediately. They issued a warrant and arrested him, but he posted bail and only spent one night in jail. Lopes returned to the pulpit to clear up some lies he told to his congregation. He told them that he was not a hired killer for the mafia was not counseled by a former Nixon aide, and did not find God on death row, but instead by reading a Bible in prison. The truth about Lopes was he strangled his second wife and stabbed and choked his companion, leaving her for dead. Lopes was convicted of murder and attempted murder in 1972, but he was paroled in 1983 on condition that he not leave the state. He was briefly placed in prison for violating his parole, but he was arrested again in 1997 on the charge of bigamy. He died in an Illinois prison at the age of 77. Ernie Stokes, a retired preacher in Centerville, Alabama, claimed to have been the victim of a home invasion in 2005. His wife, Sybil, was tragically found dead from a gunshot wound. However, inconsistencies in Stokes' account quickly raised suspicions among authorities. It was revealed that Stokes had been unfaithful to his wife, carrying on an affair with a member of his church congregation. Furthermore, he admitted to a friend that he and Sybil had not been intimate in years. The discovery that Stokes had purchased bullets the day of the murder provided compelling evidence against him. In 2006, Stokes was arrested and subsequently sentenced to 20 years in prison for the murder of his wife. The case exposed the dark reality behind the facade of his spiritual leadership. Terry Greer. In 2013, 18-year-old Susanna Greer hid inside a closet from her father after he shot her mother. He was able to squeeze a hand into the closet and shot her in the chest and arm before Susanna wrestled the gun from him and ran to the neighbor's home. When police arrived, they found the mother dead from gunshots to the head, neck, and hand. In that time, Terry had unsuccessfully committed suicide by stabbing himself 8 times with a large knife. Greer testified that he didn't remember the events that took place that day due to medication for cardiovascular dementia, a brain injury from the prior year, and depression. In 2013, he was charged with his wife's murder and the attempted murder of his daughter, but a judge ordered him not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect a year later. He was initially sent to a state institution, but was later released to a group home under several strict conditions, including having no contact with his daughter unless she initiated the contact. Fred Newlander was the founding rabbi of the Congregation Imkor Shalom Reform Temple in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. 20 years after opening the temple, his wife, Carol Newlander, was murdered. Fred would resign as the rabbi from his congregation a year later, as the murder case had become a spectacle shown on television. In 2002, Fred was convicted of hiring 2 men to murder his wife, and he paid them around $30,000 for the job to be completed. Details of his personal life also came up, and during the time of his wife's murder, he was having an affair with a radio personality. Fred's first trial resulted in a hung jury, and the retrial was moved to another county due to the media coverage. He was then convicted of murder and sentenced to 30 years in prison. Fred died on April 17, 2024, at a New Jersey prison at the age of 82. Michael Tabb. Michael Tabb was a pastor at a Methodist church in Troop, Texas, when he beat his wife to death in the parsonage. Marla Tabb was found lying in a pool of blood in their bedroom. The murder weapon was never found, but she received blunt force trauma to her head and a broken jaw in several places. She was killed just 6 weeks after giving birth to their second son. Tabb maintained his innocence, but authorities found blood on his shoes and in his truck bed. He accepted a plea bargain that would send him to prison for 50 years to spare his family the pain of a trial. However, the prosecutors increased the sentence after Tabb tried to commit suicide on the day he was supposed to plead guilty. Nick Hatcheney was a youth pastor at a church in Bainbridge Island, Washington, and he was viewed as a devout man of God. In 1997, his wife Dawn died in a house fire the day after Christmas. The members of his church believed it was a tragic accident, and they rallied around Nick during this difficult time as he continued to work at the church. As part of his job, he conducted marriage counseling sessions with his parishioners. The manner in which he conducted these sessions is what ultimately led to his arrest for the death of his wife. Hatcheney started his sessions by meeting with the couple, but he would later only meet with the wife. Nick told one woman, Annette Anderson, that God wanted them to have sex as part of the counseling, and they regularly met at a hotel for their session. He started having sex with other women in the church too, including Dawn's mother. Amazingly, she thought she was doing the right thing to help him get over the death of her daughter. Annette eventually told her husband, who then told high-ranking members of the church that would help start an investigation. Hatcheney had admitted to one woman that he killed his wife to be with her, and her testimony would help lead to his murder conviction in 2002. That's all for today. These tragic cases reveal the disturbing reality that even spiritual leaders can commit heinous crimes. It's a reminder that appearances can be deceiving. Let's stay vigilant and share these stories to prevent such tragedies. Want to know more about similar cases? Subscribe now.